How many mornings in your life, let's really pause here. How many mornings in your life have you woken up and been like, I am so freaking glad that I have this life. I'm so in awe that I get to be this one. How many mornings of your life have you felt that way? Open your eyes and that's the way you feel. How many times? And following your North Node and leaning into your soul's evolution, the path that you had planned, right? Our natal chart is a screenshot of the sky at the moment of our birth. When you lean into that North Star and that North Node, like you just wake up more and more and more and more and more satisfied that you have the exact life that you have. I personally have a love affair, like a romantic love affair going on with the nodes in astrology, the North Node and the South Node. Maybe you've heard of them. Maybe you want to understand them better. And if you do, this is like the perfect video. You're like exactly in the right place, because in this video, I am going to bring it down to an Astro Beginner level. This is a series that I have on my channel where I specifically speak in detail, assuming that the person watching this wants to understand the broader context and like inner workings of these astrological pieces. When we think about the North Node and South Node, this is fate and destiny, the North Node, and karma, the South Node. So if any of these topics are of interest to you, I highly recommend you stick around and hang out while we go through an unpacking and revealing of what the North and South Node represent in astrology. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Carly and this is Owning Authenticity, and specifically this series is called Astro Beginners. If you were to go to the description of this video and click into the Astro Beginner playlist that is there, you'll find about 30 different videos where I am speaking to a very initial foundation level understanding of astrology and kind of boiling it down piece by piece into these like digestible, sweet little spoonfuls. Okay, so also, if you were to dive back into that playlist, you're going to find some of my earliest work here on YouTube. So it takes us back in time, almost 4 years. And I just got to give props to that 4 years ago version of me. She was so uncomfortable and freaking doing the thing anyway. So good for her. And this video, I can't believe I never made an Astro Beginners North Node, South Node video for that playlist. Like obviously it was not the right time until this moment. And I'm so excited to like open, kind of like pull back the curtain on my own love affair. Like why do I spend so much time talking about the nodes? Okay, like there's like 800 videos on the Owning Authenticity, almost a playlist, Owning Authenticity YouTube channel, and 82 of those, so like 10%, are me talking about the nodes. Okay, like there's probably hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours of content of like talking about the nodes. And why do I do that? Okay, like I am the kind of being that does nothing that's not on purpose and not beneficial. Okay, like it's got to be valuable. If I'm going to spend my time and energy, my most valuable resources, if I'm going to spend my time and energy talking about something, you better believe it's going to be important. So why have I spent hundreds of hours talking about the North and South Node? And this is because this framework of understanding this axis in astrology, axis just meaning that the two nodes, the North and South Node, they are in an axis. So like they're 180 degrees apart from each other on a circle, which means they're opposite from each other always. So like when one moves, the other one moves. It's like always attached. And so this axis in astrology, with one end, the North Node end, representing fate and destiny, and the other end, the South Node end, representing karma, this captivated my mind from the very first diving into astrology I ever did. And for me personally, I also have my Mars on the same degree as my North Node. So like my Mars and my North Node are both at 17 degrees of Pisces. And I always found it really like alluring and really like magnetic that they were sitting on the same degree, because I don't have anything else in my chart that's like that, where I have two things sitting at the same degree. So caught my attention. And as I got to know the North Node and the South Node, like I started to see that even though I was, 30 plus years into my life at that point of seeing this for the first time, I looked at the story of this, like, here's where you came from, the karma, the South Node, and here's where you're going, the North Node, the destiny, fate. And this story arc, I could look back in my life and I could freaking see it clear as day that this has been playing out my whole life. So it's not like becoming conscious of astrology and conscious of the North and South Node is the beginning of your nodal journey. No, dude, you started that the day you were born. Okay, so your nodal journey is as long as you are old. You've been on it the whole time. And this story of like your specific South Node and your specific North Node, where are you coming from? Where are you going? You'll see layers and layers and layers of like how that journey has played out through basically every chapter of your life so far. So again, if you are into this video and this kind of content, especially speaking to a beginner level, like if you really appreciate me spending my time to do that, please take a second and like the video, leave me a thumbs up, save it, share it with your friends if they would like this kind of astrology content. If they want to fall in love with the North and South Node, send them the video, okay? Sharing is caring. And when we dive a little deeper, okay, into North Node, South Node, we're just going to take this like one step at a time. I've got a whole outline of notes. We'll see how close I stick to that. And I'm not even sure how long I'm going to sit here and talk about this, but I wanted to make sure that I got the most important parts up front, okay? And that is the fate and destiny is the North Node and karma is the South Node. So I want to go back to that and spend just a little bit of time outlining that spectrum, that axis, and talk about then why this sets up such an arc, such a story arc for our entire lives, okay? And why living into our destiny is challenging, okay? And it is, and for good reason. And we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about how to line up with your fate, because that, like lining up with your destiny, that's part of following your North Node and using your North Node sign and house as something like a North Star to like aim yourself towards that, and it lines you up bit by bit by bit with your fate and your destiny. And that's where I say, like, as you look back in your journey, as you learn more about your North and South Node that's in your chart, you'll see that you've already been lining up most likely with your North Node unconsciously, just because you intuitively feel that that's the medicine I need in this lifetime. And as you learn more about your South Node, you'll see how, right, some of my darkest times in my whole life were when I was really hung up on my South Node energy, right? Like when I was really doing my karmic thing, when I was in my karmic loop, yeah, that was some rough stuff. And yep, the loop looked just like that, just like my South Node says that it does. Okay, very good. We're all tracking. We're all on the same page. And so as we think about this spectrum, our North Node represents our future. So North Node, like, where are we headed? Where are we trying to point ourselves towards? And the South Node being our past and where we are coming from. And so depending on who you are listening to talk about this, you'll either hear the South Node referred to as like your past life. And if you're somebody who is into reincarnation, like possibly you like that explanation. That's the version that I choose to use as I contemplate the South Node, is that this represents who I was in a past life, or possibly even in a series of past lives. If you aren't into incarnation, the South Node can represent your earliest life experience, especially 0 to 8 years old. So like really like the foundation of your social conditioning, what messages, what programming was installed into you when you first got here in this lifetime. The South Node can also help unravel that. Another way to think about it is that our South Node is like our comfort zone. Okay, it's like what we know. It is the very definition of the known. It's the energy that is the most developed in your soul. Okay, so like when we look at your entire chart, when we look at your full birth chart or the snapshot of where everything was in the sky at the moment of your birth, your entry into this life, when we look at the South Node, the energy and the house of the South Node, this is your comfort zone. This is like where if you go unconscious, you're like right there in the South Node. When you wake up, when you become conscious, you're going to be in your South Node. Like that's just how it always works. When we go into sleepwalking mode, we walk back into our South Node because it's comfortable there. Okay, it's the most developed, most accessible energy that we have in our soul. As opposed to the North Node and fate, destiny, etc., etc. This is the very definition of the unknown. Okay, is like that is the least developed energy in your overall birth chart. The North Node is pointing to your least developed energy. So when we think about the North and South Node, picture a teeter-totter where there's a 500-pound person on the South Node end and the North Node end is a 10-pound baby. And this is our dynamic. Okay, it's like there's no teeter-totter happening here. The South Node is dominant, period. The South Node has more density. The South Node has more ruts in it. Like there's just more mass in the South Node end. And because of that, we have more experience there, which means when I say experience, I want you to hear two things. Number one is expertise. Okay, because we don't become an expert at something we haven't practiced, right? Like they say in, I think it's the book Outliers, like it takes 10,000 hours of practice to master something. So think of your South Node as something that you have mastered. Your South Node is something that like you've got a PhD in that and you spent 60 years of a research career like putting that PhD to use and like doing your experiments with that energy. So you've got just like an abundance of expertise in that area because you've practiced it so much. And the second thing I want you to hear when we talk about experience, so first is expertise and the second is shadow. Okay, because when we have experience, there's the light and the dark. The light is the expertise that you now have because of how much you've practiced it. And the dark is because it's over exaggerated. It's like overemphasized. It's too much. Like imagine a recipe that calls for salt and like it calls for a half a teaspoon of salt or whatever. And so you take the half a teaspoon of salt and you sprinkle it in and the salt makes it delicious. Beautiful. Imagine you put like 5 tablespoons of salt in there in the same recipe. How does it taste now? You know, like probably nearly inedible. And again, this is our South Node. Okay, like we've got it so heavy and so like dominant that it's overpowering a lot of other things. Okay, mostly the energy the North Node is in. And so when we will on purpose choose to turn and focus on our North Node energy, whatever energy our North Node is pointed in, whatever house it's located in, when we will intentionally develop that energy, it naturally is like, imagine, well, my mom was telling me about her making soup the other day and how it got too salty. And so she added in water. And that like made it less salty. Like it was, okay, that's a better balance now. It's like more palatable. It's like more delicious. Okay. And so practicing our North Node energy on purpose is like adding water to the recipe. It's like making it more distilled in the presence of this expanding North Node energy. So unknown territory is our North Node. Our comfort zone is our South Node. North Node is the fated event. South Node are the karmic loops. When we line up with our fate, with our destiny, there's like a sense of like being part of the universal plan, like being in on the joke kind of thing. Like just life gets super magical when you start leaning into your North Node. And when you stay stuck in your south node, it's a karmic loop and it feels like it's beating the shit out of you. And that's how you know. That's like studying your south node, becoming conscious of your south node is where I would start, so that you know, when am I on a karmic loop? When have I sleepwalked back into my karmic playground and I'm sitting on this merry-go-round that I have done no less than 5 trillion iterations on it so far, and now I'm back on the karmic merry-go-round and it's hurting me, right? Every time I go around, there's like this tree branch that's slapping me in the face, and we spend so much time before we become conscious of all of this trying to figure out how to cut off that tree branch, when the answer is get off that merry-go-round and stop riding that ride. There are so many other rides that you could be riding. Okay. Like that is not the only place that you can be. So this journey of turning away from the south node, which we're going to get a little bit more into that here in a little bit, turning away from the south node, turning towards the north node, is about evolution, right? Like discovering the new ride, walking into the unknown. And when you do that, you will be changed by that process. Like you will evolve by that process. So the nodes are really central to a kind of astrology that I personally prefer, which is called evolutionary astrology. And it's not so much the idea of evolution as far as like the thousands of years leaps of like human beings coming from whatever people have studied and think that we come from. More evolution in terms of like day to day to day to day to day. Because like, for example, one of my one-on-one clients, I woke up this morning to a message that last night she did stand-up comedy for the first time ever. Okay. She like had this thing that she's going to do it this month, and there's still like 3 weeks plus left on the month, and she went and she did it. She was just going to go and like check it out and see, like get the vibe and get comfortable in that space, et cetera, et cetera. And she felt so good there that she put her name in and they called her on stage and she did her minutes, and it was so fun. It was so exhilarating. So like she is now a different person, because the her that woke up yesterday morning had never done stand-up comedy before, right? That's like in the narrative of who she is as a person. And the her that woke up this morning is somebody who's done stand-up comedy one time. So she's a different person. Like her narrative has evolved. Okay. Her energy has evolved. And do you know what she texted me this morning? And this is really the root of why I am so passionate about like personal evolution and following the North Star of our North Node and lining up with our fate and destiny and all the pleasure that entails. Yes, growth edges. Yes, discomfort of stepping outside the comfort zone. Yes, all of that. And the pleasure that is entailed in lining up with your destiny. Okay. Do you know what she texted me this morning? She said, "It feels so good to wake up this morning and remember this is my life." How many mornings in your life, let's really pause here. How many mornings in your life have you woken up and been like, I am so freaking glad that I have this life. I'm so in awe that I get to be this one. How many mornings of your life have you felt that way? Open your eyes, and that's the way you feel. How many times? And following your North Node and leaning into your soul's evolution, the path that you had planned, right? Our natal chart is a screenshot of the sky at the moment of our birth. And that means that from the moment you were born, you had that chart. That means that from the moment of your birth, you were already in the karmic loop, in the over-exaggerated energy of your South Node. That's where you're born. And you already had the intention of walking towards the North Node end of things. So this has been going on for your whole life. And most likely, like I said, when you lean into like, what is my north node? Like, I'm like really getting curious at this point of like, what is my south node? What's my north node? And I'm going to tell you about the playlist I have on my channel here in just a second. But yeah, like when you lean into that North Star and that North Node, like you just wake up more and more and more and more and more satisfied that you have the exact life that you have. Okay. Like that's like my radar for like, are you living more in your South Node or are you living more in your North Node? Because once you are living like more and more and more and more, and maybe even getting into majority of the time living in your North Node energy, your life satisfaction goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, and there's no top end to how you can live into your soul's evolution. I suppose the top end is the day you die, right? Like until then, every day it can be a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And along with that little bit more is your satisfaction with your life. So this is why it's like just so important to me in this moment, like so compelling to come and sit here and talk about how to do this, okay? And how to make use of the 80 videos that are on my channel, where I have a unique playlist for each natal North Node. So Aries North Node, Taurus North Node, et cetera, for all 12. And then also for each of those, like typically Aries is associated with the first house, Taurus with the second house. So each playlist is also labeled with like the house that it would correspond with. And it's not exactly the same. Like the house and the sign are not the same thing. Like you would interpret them slightly differently. And if you and I were going to sit in a one-on-one session, we could totally do that. But for the sake of those playlists, you can also use it. Like, let's say you have an Aries North Node in the fourth house. Okay. Well, the fourth house is typically associated with Cancer. Cancer is the fourth zodiac sign, so it's associated with the fourth house. So you may find resonance with the Aries North Node playlist, and looking at that, you may also find just as much, if not even more, resonance looking at the Cancer North Node playlist, because the fourth house is like your personal flavor of it. And so like you got to put them both together. And for some people, it's like it matches. So like, for example, mine is a Pisces North Node in the 12th house, and the Pisces is associated with the 12th house. So like my North Node is Pisces and 12th house. And those are, again, not the same, but very similar. So like in a situation where they're matching, you could probably dive even deeper into that particular playlist. So like, none of any of those playlists though make any sense if you don't understand like the basic level of like what even am I looking at, you know? So let's dive a little bit deeper into navigating this axis, okay? And like taking this really over exaggerated energy, being the South Node, and developing on purpose the really under exaggerated energy of your North Node. And this is where free will comes into the picture, because if we stay unconscious, if we stay on autopilot and we just act out our previous patterns, which is all autopilot will ever be, like if we aren't consciously paying attention and consciously making decisions and like pulling our awareness out into a bigger picture place, when we're asleep making decisions, we're just recreating the past. So that's like in that karmic loop of the South Node. Some people live their whole life in that place. Some souls, basically, like another way to say that, like some souls aren't scheduled to wake up in whatever lifetime it is that they're living. They're not meant to do that. And that's like none of our business. We're not on the inside of that experience. And even within our own experience, we may find that we were asleep inside our own karmic patterns for certain chapters. And that's, you know, there is no right or wrong way to be living your nodal journey. There's no like defined timing that has to be taking place, but there's always an increase in consciousness included in moving more into your North Node, because when it comes down to an axis, it's about being pulled in two opposite directions, okay? Like the South Node is pulling you and is magnetizing you towards that energy in that house. The North Node is pulling you and magnetizing you in a different direction. And for reasons that are basically wired into our mind and body, change is hard because the body is set up to be efficient and conserve energy. And this means make habits, make unconscious pathways that are so easy to use that we don't have to spend any energy to be able to use it. So our mind and body is wired to stay in our comfort zone. So leaving your comfort zone and choosing the less developed pathway, it's always a choice. And that's why I say an expansion of consciousness is always included in being able to live more into your North Node, because in order to make that choice, you have to be making a choice. And remember, on autopilot, there are no choices. There's just recreating the past. And so once our consciousness expands and we have more of a space, more of a pause between the impetus and how we respond, right? Like when we just do our knee-jerk reaction, we're recreating more of the past. When we will pause and be with what is and then make a calculated choice of how do we personally want to show up in this moment, we are making a conscious choice. At least at that point, we have a choice. We have an option between, do you want to create more of the past karma, or do you want to line up more with your destiny? You know, that's the choice that's on the table, again, so long as you're making choices. So when we think about that, imagine you have a semi-truck, and not even just a semi-truck. It's got like a full trailer on the back of it and is hooked to another full trailer on the back of it, okay? And it's going 80 miles an hour towards the south. Now, basically the job is to like, okay, we need that truck to be facing the opposite direction and ideally be going roughly, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in the opposite direction. Like, think in physical terms about what kind of maneuvers need to happen there, right? Like if we're headed 80 miles an hour in the south, towards the south, we need to slow down. We need to press on the brake pedal. We need to decrease the momentum of the direction that we're currently heading. So this is all towards the south node. That's why I say, like, the first thing I would do if I was new to this kind of study is get really aware of what your personal south node karmic loop looks like, feels like, smells like, sounds like what is it? Because you need to know that stuff to even recognize, like, oh, I'm on the karmic loop again. I'm on the karmic merry-go-round again. I'm going to interrupt that. I'm going to tap on the brake pedal. I'm going to give myself more of a space to pause and make a conscious choice about the energy that I want to channel into this situation. And so change is hard, okay? Like a vehicle changing directions, like it's not going to just be going 80 miles an hour in the opposite direction, like instantly. No, like we're going to stop and then turn it around and like really maneuver the turn and like figure out like, okay, well, I've never driven north before. I don't know how to go that way. I've only ever gone south. Well, okay, but is that really a reason to be like going south for the rest of your life? Or do you want to go north and like see what's up there? Maybe it's beautiful. Maybe it's fun. Maybe it's like musical and just delicious in ways that you can't even imagine because it's in the unknown. Okay, so this dream, this destiny, this fate version of our lives is for us to choose. The North Node is a muscle that is ours to build and develop, where like on the South Node end of things, I do say like we're turning away from the South Node so that we can head towards the North Node. But at the same time, like remember, we have all this experience, we have all this expertise in this energy, and those are gifts we don't want to give up. We don't want to leave them behind, and you don't have to. So when we look at the South Node energy in your chart, yes, it is the most overdeveloped energy, but also there's a lot of really potent, powerful gifts inside of that energy, inside your South Node energy for you, that you can harness, you can maximize, and you can purify. Okay, and when I say purify, I'm mostly talking about how to bring that energy back into balance, right? Like we don't want 5 tablespoons of salt in the recipe. We're going to add some water and we're going to make it so that the salt is actually a really delicious addition, not an overpowering smack to the tongue. Okay, so we are going to put it into balance, which means we're going to make the most of that South Node energy while on purpose choosing deliberately to ask ourselves over and over and over, what would it look like to bring my North Node energy into this moment 1% more? And so how do you do that? I mean, really depends on what your North Node energy is, what your North Node is pointed at. And that's where, again, I would refer you back to the 12 playlists where I talk specifically to Aries North Nodes or Taurus North Nodes or Pisces North Nodes. And that's what we talk about, is like how to recognize the karmic loop of that configuration, how to introduce more of the North Node energy once you wake up out of the karmic loop. Like that's what every single bit of those individual readings are about. And so it's about our choice. It's about our ability to make a conscious choice. And so we've talked a lot about the natal North Node. So like your North Node that's in your chart that was like, where was the North Node at the moment that you were born? Your natal North Node is like a static, never changing piece of your lifelong trajectory in this lifetime. Okay. It's like the outline of your soul's evolution that you intended to make. And then, right, like literally from the moment you were born, the North Node is still moving, right? Everything in the sky is always moving. And so from the moment you were born, it started moving into a new place, and it just keeps moving into a new place, and it's always moving into a new place. It takes the North Node 18.6 years to go all the way around the zodiac, which means when you are about 18 and a half years old, and this is true for everybody, we all have our first North Node return. So between 18 and 19 years old, there is like this karmic fated turning point that happens for each of us. And it's really easy to be like, well, yeah, you graduate high school at that age. And like, of course, everybody's life changes. But like, isn't that interesting that right there is where we would put this, like, you're no longer a child, you're now an adult. Okay. And so that turning point exists for everyone. So often at that point, we can be more introduced to more of the North Node energy. We can become more conscious of our South Node karmic loops at 18 to 19 years old, maybe. And if not, and even if we are, we'll have our next nodal return when you're about 37. Okay. And then 56. And then in every 18.6 years for the rest of your life, you have one of these turning points where you are very much intended to kind of be redirected. Okay. And that really, it depends on what you're doing. As far as like, let's say you are really hardcore rutted into your South Node pattern. At the time of your nodal return, it's going to get really painful, like extra painful. And the question from the universe is like, are you sure you want to be hanging out here? Because you don't look like you're having very much fun. And so we hit like maybe a breaking point, and the breaking open is heading more towards our North Node energy. Let's say on the flip side of that like you're well into your soul's evolution and that you have developed your North Node energies more and more and more. And then you hit a nodal return period. It's like the universe showing up to be like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. High fives from the universe. Like all of these different synchronicities lining up to affirm just how much you are absolutely going to the north at this point, not the south. You are living unknown experiences. You're in brand new territory. Everything is unpredictable. It's all just clicking into place for you. That is the North Node affirmation of like, you're doing good, sis. Like, this is great. You know, keep it up. Keep up the good work. So as these 18.6 year lapse that the North Node is doing to come back to the place it was when you were born, there's also like, as it goes around that journey, it's spending 18 months in each sign. Okay, so we have like these chapters of this larger, nearly 2-decade story. we have these 18-month chapters. And in those chapters, we are still, and what I mean by that is like, okay, so right now at the time I'm recording this, we are about to experience one of those chapter changes, like the turning of a page, where from July of 2023 through January of 2025, we had the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. Okay, and then it's hitting that point in January of 2025 where the North Node will move into Pisces and the South Node will move into Virgo. And we then will have Pisces North Node going on for 18 months, same as what we had for the Aries North Node and the Taurus North Node before that. So this chapter change means that for the collective, like in these next 18 months, January of 25 through like July of 26, in these next 18 months, the entire collective is like working on a miniature version of the Pisces North Node soul evolution. Okay, like it's true for everyone. Like that's where it's at in the sky. Everybody's getting the same lesson plan for these 18 months. And we are meant to like go through all of them, like at the time when it like points to that one on the clock, like that's what time it is. Like right now it's time for Pisces North Node soul evolution. We're meant to become more aware of the expertise and the shadow of overemphasized Virgo energy within us. And we're meant to become aware of how to consciously bring in Pisces energy 1% more, 1% more, 1% more. That's the game plan for collective consciousness during that Pisces North Node chapter. But still, like you are personally using the Pisces North Node soul evolution and like what is clicking open, what's breaking through. You're meant to use that to apply that to your own personal soul evolutionary journey, which is your natal North Node placement. Okay, so like for example, let's say in your natal chart, you've got a Taurus North Node and Scorpio South Node. And so then the question is like, wait, am I supposed to be doing Pisces North Node stuff or am I still doing Taurus North Node stuff? Like how do I put these together? And that again is where I'll refer you back to the playlist, because as you look back at what is actually included in the Taurus North Node playlist, for example, is talking about, like, for example, how to use this most recent chapter where we had the Aries North Node going on. How do you use that Aries North Node soul evolution to benefit your Taurus North Node soul evolution? So like in the playlist, I like do the work of tying it together for you so that you can apply the current chapter that collective consciousness is on to your own personal nodal journey. So like really zipping those two things together. And then if you still have questions, that's what the comment section is for. But I do think that it makes it a lot clearer of like how to use this current lesson plan of wherever the transit node is at this time for whatever you were meant to do, like in your lifelong arc of evolution. So it's really very interesting, like how when you take the expertise of your South Node and you go apply it to the activities of your North Node, it's like it just makes this magic that is so transcending either energy. Like it truly is like a blending and merging together of like the powerhouse that it is when you have both, right? Like when your teeter-totter is balanced and you can go back and forth between this axis and like really navigate both ends of it, you're unstoppable. You're unstoppable at that point, because the whole point of every axis, the whole point of every sister sign combination, Pisces and Virgo just being one of them, is that they balance the shadow of the other. The light of Virgo is medicine for the shadow of Pisces. The light of Pisces is medicine for the shadow of Virgo. So if you have prominent both of them, then you've got skills that can like absolutely work together to do things that it's just not possible to do when you're really lopsided in only one of them. So that's where I'll leave us as far as unpacking this basic beginner level conversation of what are the nodes and what do they represent in astrology. Again, I refer you back to the library of the 12 different playlists, and those are all linked in the description box. I also invite you to leave a comment or a question, or let me know if you had like an aha moment as I was talking about this, something that makes sense now that didn't make sense before, or if there's like a clarification question of like, wait, what did you mean by that? Because I didn't track with you. Dude, who knows if any of what I just said makes any sense? I'm sure it depends a lot on the shapes of the ear holes listening. My friend told me recently, like, it's because my star-shaped words won't fit into their square-shaped ear holes. So hopefully my star-shaped words are being met with some star-shaped ear holes. And if it wasn't a great fit, you know, like, thank you for your time anyway. Thank you so much for being here. No matter how much you got from this video, thank you for turning inward into yourself and leaning 1% more into the evolutionary plan that your soul had when it came into this lifetime. Thank you for every ounce of what you do to line up with your fate, your destiny, because the universe has a very specific need for exactly what you are. Okay? You are very important to the grand scheme of the collective unfolding. The highest good of the all is benefited by you lining up with your North Node. And if this video helped you to do that, even just one little bit more, then you're welcome. Until next time, I do hope that you will take such good care of the precious one that you are, and so will I.